one less chin, because I'm starting to get one now here. One less
One
chin
less.
would be cool, and then like a little less belly, and then I'd be happy. Like I would be okay. I'm okay being fluff. I just want to tie my shoes without losing my breath.
This would be
I feel like
a
it's a
this
small.
is
It
good.
would be a small win. A small win.
It
Anyway,
is it is good. All
hello
right, let's
everyone.
we need to we need to start
Moving
recording
on.
because
Moving
we need
right
to
on.
we have to do a show in
Yeah, we got to do a show,
quickly.
and then I gotta go.
All right, so why don't you go
Melissa,
ahead
thank you
and
for
get
being
it
here. I
started?
hope you feel better. She's not feeling well today, so hope you feel
Oh
better.
no, Melissa, I hope you feel better. That
Poor
sucks.
poopy. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to She Podcasts, the podcast, episode 392. I am your co-host, Jessica Kupferman, and with me, as always, the very lean, mean machine, Elsie Escobar. How are you today, my dear?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. Thank you so much for asking.
You're so welcome.
That is
Um,
yes.
so we have a lot of stuff to talk about today, specifically murders in Mastodon. So what should we start with?
Let's
Murder
start with
or
murders. Let's start with murder first, and we'll see if we get it.
juicy
You
stuff?
know, before we get started though, there's for the majority because I have two other shows that I am recording now. I have to say that there is something to be said about, you know, planning and covering the topics, right? There's
Mhm.
something about that feels great, particularly for marketing purposes. So like for pre-promotion and for
Yeah.
post-production marketing. And because if we were to say we're covering, hey, in this upcoming episode, because I curate what we're going to be covering through the week. So I
Right.
have things, right? That's already happening.
Always.
So very easily I could just be like, hey, Melissa, or whoever or whatever, or me, and go like, hey, show up and watch Jess and Elsie cover. We're going to be covering these stories. But
Right.
what ends up happening is we record and we don't either we cover one or we completely not cover any of the things
Anything.
that are in
How
the
much
show
on a
notes.
scale of 1 to 10, how much does that annoy you? I need
Well,
to know.
let me tell you why it doesn't annoy me
It used
because
to.
yes, absolutely. It did. But I have made peace with the fact that that's what our show is. Our show is that, and if I go with the flow of the show, it's easier for me and you, and it also makes it a lot more fun for me. Like it makes me have a good time doing the show if
Because
I
you're not
can
stressing.
just because I'm not stressing about it. I just let it happen. And if we cover it, we cover it. Like I've just let it go. But I see that it's important in some ways for the show to grow,
I agree. I
for
agree.
us to do that. But what I don't want though is because what I don't want is like the way you open the show this time. Hey, we're going to be covering murders in Mastodon. And then we never cover Mastodon because we just talked about murders. Like I don't want
But
that
we
because you
said we
said
were
that at the
definitely
beginning of
going
the
to do
show.
that this time. I
I'm sorry,
only
what?
said at the beginning of the show because you said, if this is the title, we got to make sure we cover something about it. And I said, okay, we'll make sure,
Right.
we'll just have to make sure that we do it.
Yeah, I think but that's the
Just make
problem
sure.
because we
But I agree
anyway,
with
let's
you. I
go
mean,
ahead and talk
normally
about
I don't.
murders and
Wait,
let's
before
just
we do, I just want to say this. There's a lot of things that you and Scott have in common as far as like having specific rigid ideas as to how something will go, and then I sort of beat you down until you're
yes.
like, I've just let go of the fact that I could ever have control of you or this situation, and I'm just going to go with it. And I feel like you and Scott should have a therapy session together, just
I think
because
we
you
need
both
to.
have to deal with and wrangle me. And I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing because both of you are kind of rigid, and maybe it's good for you to have someone that you can be spontaneous with, since it literally never happens any other time. I could be wrong.
I think that it depends. I mean,
You're probably both
I don't mind it
extremely
because
irritating.
there's nobody like you as in like as a
Yes.
as a co-host. Like you are the ultimate to me and you're the ultimate type of co-host that I can always rely on to be able to deliver content. Like it doesn't
That's so
matter
nice.
what we're going to do. Like I always know exactly what I'm going to get. I always know that there's going to be high energy. I always know there's going to be, that it's going to be entertaining. I always know there's going to be at least a couple of giggles here and there, possibly straight up
More.
like
Or if we're in
LOL.
trouble. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's always going to be there. And there's always going to be energy. All of that stuff is
That's
for sure
nice.
true. But what I cannot guarantee is the content. So that's the only aspect of it, is like, how do we find a balance of making sure we hit it and we go with it? That's the tough part, I think, for me.
I mean, when you crack down, if you've changed your mind about being rigid and not being rigid a few times. So like if you're telling me now, okay, I like what we're doing, but I want to be a little more rigid, I'll go with it. Totally.
Right.
I'll
I
be
think
careful
that,
to follow what we hit.
you know why I was, see, we're already on a weird, but anyway, I do want to follow up on this question here. Maybe
these
for
types of tangents are important because it helps other people who are listening, be able to instigate, have these, hear what these conversations sound like so that they can perhaps instigate it with their own partners, that we can have a
right.
conversation and make changes to our podcast live so that people can see how it works. Right?
Yes. And
I don't think that's bad.
I don't think in terms of content, because I see how important it is for the planning of the content and creating the best show. Now, I've been doing a lot of research and I've been prepping my team over on Libsyn, right, at leading content based around video podcasting, because I am very, very much bullish on providing as much education for video podcasting as possible for our people, because there's going to be a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions that are going to be coming up and just coming up all the way around video. That's just a conversation that needs to be addressed. So I want to provide those things. So I've been doing a lot of research. I've been doing a lot of like, what are the best practices and whatnot. So there is a podcast. I'm going to be doing a couple of live events coming up for April and May, with the team of Ecamm, the Ecamm team. We're going to be co-hosting a couple of live events, and I know exactly what I want. And they have a podcast called The Flow, which is very, very good, by the way. And so their tactic that I've been watching from the outside in is quite fantastic, and I think is awesome. And I think it's the ultimate, but it requires a lot of work, I think, in terms of post-production and pre-production. So first, they record exactly like we're recording, like this, right? So they go live, they have a live stream, they do it the same time every year, every week. They have their preparation, right? They have their focus, but they'll start it. They started off exactly like we started, just kind of not putzing around, but like, hello, everybody, here we are, the live stream. And like, we know that we're going live, we're doing our thing. And then they cover the show. And in covering the show, they do almost everything we do, which is, I'll do that again. Let me take that again. Hold on, John, you're going to have to take that out. Like all of the things that we do, right? Every single part of that. And they'll wrap up the show at the end, all the stuff. Now, what they do is these are the extra bonus stuff. So they have a playlist of the live stream. And then they have a playlist of the replay. And the replay is the edited down version. It's just the beginning of it when the show goes, like literally the beginning, after you know how you intro the show and everything with the music, starting there, and it cuts to the end. So all of those stuff at the beginning and at the end that we do when we're futzing around, it's all cut. And then everything in between is also cut. Like all of the stuff that we mess up, all of the retakes that we do, all of the tangents that John takes out of our main audio show, all of that is taken out. So they have a really clean start to finish show on the replay on YouTube. And that's the show that goes out live. That's the audio show. So it's great because for like their first episode was, I think it was almost an hour long, the stream. But when you listen to the podcast, it's a half an hour. They took out all of this stuff that was not interesting for
Do we want that though?
That they were,
Do we want that though?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like when I was listening as a new listener, I just wanted to get to the chase because the topic was very specific. We're going to be talking about this XYZ. So anything
Mhm.
that wasn't XYZ was cut out. But it doesn't matter because the live stream is there. If you want the whole thing, you can just go watch the live stream and
Right.
you can experience the whole thing. Like it's just giving people a very specific end product that I find really helpful. So if I don't want the futzing around with stuff and I just want them to get to the topic that they want to cover, I have that option and I love that.
So are you
So I've
saying
just
okay.
go
Wait,
ahead.
so are you saying we should change to a similar format or not?
I'm saying that's my favorite. But I
You
also recognize,
you're
no,
not
I'm
answering
serious.
it.
I I feel that is a wonderful way to, that's probably the optimal way to do a video podcast to audio. Optimal way. But I recognize the post production of that is a lot.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
like it's
lot.
a lot. It's a lot. And
I don't
so
wanna do it,
in a
and I don't want someone else to do it.
exactly.
And people can just fast forward.
In a perfect world, it would be great. It like in a perfect world, whatever John delivers to the audio would be what the video portion would also show. That would be like
Yeah,
the magical part of it all. And I do
right.
believe that they use Descript to do a lot of that as well. And another thing that the
Oh,
Ecamm
yeah, I
team
bet
has,
you they do because it's so much easier in Descript.
yeah. But
You're
also
right.
the Ecamm team is video heavy, right? It's like they're video focused. So what they're doing in terms of being able to get that done is they have team members that are skilled at being able to do that already, right? That's what they're doing. They're focusing on video is the huge part of their marketing. Whereas for us, that's not it. We don't have anybody on our team that is 100% just working on video stuff because we are really doing a lot of YouTube stuff like that. We don't do that. This is about the extent of our um
Yeah, that's true. We don't do it that often for sure.
no. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. But anyway,
On
shall we
murder.
move let's move
Moving
into
on to the
murder.
murder.
Moving
Murder.
on to the murder.
Murder. Murder.
Murder.
Murder. Okay.
So there was an
Later.
article that I think it's I have it here from localtoday.news, which I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I believe that this
Who
this
cares?
article was in a lot of different places, and it's about a documentary that I believe was released at South by Southwest somewhere. Yeah, it's to be premiered at South by Southwest. So somebody must already be watching this because that's what's going on right now, and it is called Citizen Sleuths. And it is a documentary that is centering really the life of an amateur true crime podcaster. And her name is Emily Nestor. And her podcast, Mile Marker 181, investigated the 2011 death of Jalea
Jalea?
Davis, who was involved in a grisly car accident at the border of Emily's home state, West Virginia. So
Yeah.
it seemed like people had
She gets in.
questions
Go ahead. Sorry.
about that death. No, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so she gets involved, and then, well, this is what it says. What unfolds is a gripping and darkly funny tale of what can happen when inexperienced investigators meddle in closed cases in order to create content. She walks the fine line between exploitation and entertainment, and then her motives are questioned, and that's how she loses control, I guess, of the situation. Is it went from being, hi, I'm entertaining you, to other people questioning, I guess, what she was trying to do with the show.
Yep.
So
And
go ahead.
yeah, in this article that we have here, which everything is linked in the show notes, by the way, if you guys want to read this. In this article, there is no it doesn't reveal exactly how there's often references in the article that she loses control or she can't get, something like that where you're like,
She can't
how do you
wrap her hands
lose?
around her own content anyway. Yeah, Elsie and I were
Yeah.
like, what do you mean lose control? How do you lose control of your own podcast?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you think about that, if people are, I mean, I just think about Only Murders in the Building, right? Because they often, you watch that, I'm assuming, right? If for those of
I
you
started to,
who
but
are listening,
I have not watched the story. No, I have not watched it fully. I've
okay.
watched like
Well,
maybe an episode. I haven't been able
for
to.
those of
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
who are listening that maybe haven't seen it, it's about three people who keep having murders in their apartment building, and they vacillate in every other episode between the listeners rallying behind them and giving opinions and tips as to how to, figure out who the murderer is, to being criticized and almost, like, and almost as if they want the hosts to be beheaded for being involving themselves. And it's sort of like, this is sort of like a real life tale of that, where I guess at first
Mm.
people were like, yeah, find the murderer, and then after a while they were like, wait, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? This isn't cool, man. What are you doing? And as soon as that happened, that's what I think, that's how you lose the reins, is like when your
Mm.
content is now making you suffer. Your content is the source of your suffering because you, friend, are an asshole. Which is what I think
That could
is
be,
what happened to
yeah.
her, right? Like her content's biting her in the ass because she's not doing it for the right reasons with the right intent. Anyway.
And I think that it's
So
not that started that way, but there's like, quotes in here that are really good. Like one of them says, quote, the downsides of turning a hobby into a career while other people's real lives and reputations are at stake are explored with both consideration and audience entertainment in mind. So it's curious because I think that this really plays into a conversation we need to be having kind of as podcasters that doesn't only affect true crime. It can be reality TV. It can be
yeah.
pop culture conversations that are happening out in the space, right? It can be political podcasts because a lot of our audiences are those people. You never know. Like, let's say we started a political podcast that all of a sudden somehow we hit a nerve and everybody started to listen to our take. And we're like, we are sort of not really into politics, but we kind of can get in trouble with politics. And now we're spewing out our own personal opinions and could possibly have real life repercussions in our democracy. I mean, I'm taking it to the nth degree, you know what I mean? But it
and I
can
don't think that
possibly
would
happen.
I don't think that would happen to us. And here's why. Because from the beginning of our podcast career, I have said more than once.
No, dude.
What?
Anyway, go ahead, finish.
What?
No, I'm just saying, I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about generally speaking, it can happen.
Let me finish my finish my sentence.
All right,
I wasn't talking about us either.
Okay.
I'm saying from when we started podcasting, I've always stressed that whether you like it or not, as soon as you become a podcaster, you are a journalist. She says in this article, I'm not a journalist and I'm not a police, I float somewhere in the middle. No, you don't. If you are reporting about a story, you are a journalist. It does not matter if you work for a paper. Your job is to get the story that your listeners want. And that doesn't matter if you're talking about politics, pop culture, regardless of what you're talking about. This is why people make fun of people who sit around just talking shit in their basement, because you're not informing, entertaining, or, or anything in between. You have to get a story, even if it's just the story of when you fell on your face. You're still a journalist reporting a story. So like, you can't vacillate. And she seems to think that she's vacillating in between being an investigator and a journalist. She's like, but I'm not either. It sounds like you're trying to be both, though. You can't be both and then say you're not one or the other. And if you are going to be those things, an investigator and a journalist, well, then you need to have like those need to be the reasons why you're doing it, not for fame and glory. That's why she got bitten, I think. Unless that's what it says in the story.
In a sense, actually. Mind you, we have not watched the documentary, so we could be completely not. This is what we're gleaning from this
Yeah.
article, right?
This says
Yeah, go ahead.
what quickly becomes clear is that Citizen Sleuth does not attempt to document an amateur podcaster's noble struggle for justice, but warns of the dangers as a whole. Emily knows true crimes have a history of changing the outcome of closed cases. She sees her podcast as her ticket to something bigger than herself. And ironically, that is happening, but out of her control. Okay. I mean, like it's just interesting. And I mean, but that all comes, I think, from having an anti-altruistic motive. Because what happens when you try to there are very few people that go out of their way to try and find fame and glory that end up getting it for being respectable. You know, like people who go out specifically for fame and glory get it, but they are not respected in any field for any reason at any time. So you have to be careful.
Yes, but also if you do have an altruistic motive for dealing with subject matters like this, it could also bite you in the behind, right? It could also, like, even if you start thinking about the context of Serial, the first time that it came out, and how it like escalated to a place where nobody had ever thought about this before, and the repercussions that it really had on that case, whether good or bad, to be able to like it had a lot of impact that nobody had really had up to that point regarding a specific case. And I do not think the Serial team went into this with thinking that this was going to happen. Like they were they're journalists. They went at it from a journalistic perspective, but didn't quite grasp the impact that it would have. Now, thinking this sentence, I think both Jess and I were like, oh my God, because it was so well thought out. And I think all of us need to kind of like hold this sentence to ourselves and like look at our own selves. So here's the quote, Citizen Sleuth is an extraordinary look at every neurotic mess up to this point, one that considers the huge ramifications of what can happen when podcasters get too high on their own stash.
That is a great line.
It's a great line. Oh my
Brilliantly
God.
written.
I mean, it's so great because think about it. We often like, when is it that if we want to look at ourselves clearly and just like, really look at ourselves in the mirror, like when have we gotten high off our own supply of podcasting? Like, do we really have times when we're like, oh, I want to do this. And it's maybe not with the best intention, or maybe we're wanting to get something that we probably shouldn't from this specific medium, or I don't know. I just think it was beautifully stated, and it made me pause because I was like, oh.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever gotten high on my own supply. It's possible. I'm trying to be, I have an enormous ego. I mean, it needs its own mattress and bedspread. So it's possible that I have, but I don't know.
And also, I think one thing that is mentioned here is that the way that this is framed as well is that whatever happens, because I don't even know what the storyline is really, other than following this whole thing, is that it was well-intentioned naivete. I can't say that word.
Doesn't sound very well-intentioned to me, but I hear you.
Well, I do feel that there is that though, Jess. That's what I'm saying. I think that something did happen there. And I think that there's a sense, at least what I glean from what you're seeing this, is that what happened is the possibility of this injustice or something going off with this specific case is what drove her to continue to think about it and continue to get herself in there and try to report on it and talk about it. And there came a point when she thought she was going one way, but realized after she kept doing it that it was not going that way at all. And the train had already gone, right? The boat sailed or whatever. And so that's why. And it seems like she took.
That's interesting too. What do you do when your story ain't no story?
Yeah. But
do you just go, oopsie, episode 10 is going to be our last episode because I ain't got shit. Bye. Like, what do you do? I mean,
We're-
I guess what she did was try and make connections where none exist, but like, that's
yeah,
not
yeah,
really a good thing either because you're
yeah,
messing with crime. So, like, what do you
yeah.
do? I
What
would
do
like
you
to
do?
give my advice as to what to do. Repeat everything I just said. Episode 10. Guess what? I ain't got no case. This show is over. Thank you and good night. See you on the next podcast where I try and solve a murder that may have actually happened. Bye. That's all you need. Just be honest.
Yeah. And also, yeah,
Honesty
because
will
it seemed
save
like
you.
that seems like that's what she did, but
It
it was
seems
like
like
she
it.
disappeared or whatever. I don't know. But all I'm saying is that I'm very curious about this. Again, it was supposed to be debuted at South by Southwest. I'm curious of
Me
about what
too.
reviews or whatever came out, but I
I can't
do
wait
want
to
to
see it.
watch it because it's
Me too.
super. It is very, very interesting
So
conversation.
compelling.
But that now guides us into
A
actual
real
murder.
murder. Ah! Go ahead.
This
I'll let
was
you do it.
like, I was a little astounded because my jaw sort of like dropped when I saw this headline. It was shared with me by our mutual friend. Actually, yeah, well, yes, because he always gives me like the best like tips and tricks all the time. Like, come in here, touching base with me, sharing funky informational things that just pop into my head. Honor Night, and he tagged me on Twitter, and he was like, "We love our
They are.
fans, but not this kind of a fan." What he said to me.
No, thank you.
So I looked at it, and the headline of this is "Podcaster Murdered by Crazed Fan Who Stalked Her Across the Country." So go ahead, Jess. Give us the play by play as you knew it from me sharing this article, and then I will wrap up with what we ended up finding out as of later.
So Elsie sends me this article, and without even conversation, both of us are in the background searching endlessly to try and find this podcast, because if someone's going to be murdered over their podcast, that better be a good ass show. So we were like, we got to find this show. What is the show? I need to hear the show. How could the show trigger someone to murder another person? It must be a hell of a show. Well, we found nothing I looked for a good, I don't even know how long, because I was in the car, and I guess you were in the car probably too, I'm guessing.
I was in the car also looking for the same thing. Yeah.
So this guy, the killer, I want to say his name. It is Ramin Karamrazai. Karamrazai. I have to say, it's the longest. It is the name with the most letters I've ever seen in my life. And I had a friend in elementary school whose last name was Marcinkowitz. And like, I thought that was the longest name I'd ever seen. But this really is the longest name I've ever seen. Anyway, apparently she has some kind of a show, we couldn't find it, where she was helping Farsi speaking people get jobs
in the tech industry. So it's it was a very and it was a very specific thing. And her name, by the way, is Zore Zadegi. That is the victim's name. Zore Zadegi.
Sadeghi, yeah. So I guess they started emailing, just conversations about the show. They became friends. Then it took a concerning turn, says the article, and Sadeghi became uncomfortable with the content of his messages and how often he was contacting her. So he was harassing her. That was December. He would call her like 100 times a day. That is just, I mean, come on. It led to in-person stalking. He visited her house the night before the murder, followed her to a conference, and then, murdered her a couple nights ago. So, go ahead. So do you want to finish the story? That's the story as I know it. Look at your face. God, you're so tense. Relax.
I know. Well, it's because it's like, I mean, seriously, like this person, mind you, the killer was a trucker. So he was driving around, I guess. It was easy for him to driving around. And he came in and he murdered them, like straight, like literally came into the house and just shot him, the husband and wife. So And the
Which,
mother,
not cool, man. Not cool.
oh, it's just, yeah,
Come on,
awful.
that's
But
a
anyway,
stupid.
in our searching for all of this stuff, I did find out that the the person, so she was not a she was not a podcaster. So it
No.
was,
Which is
so
why we couldn't
now,
find the flipping show.
exactly, that's why we couldn't find the show. And then on the New York Times, which again, articles are going to be in the show notes, on the New York Times, the title of that said "Stalker Fatally Shoots Audio Streamer and Husband in Washington." So they did their due diligence a little bit more and switched the actual vocabulary term from podcaster to audio streaming, because it was different, because the stream was, this is what the article says, the stream was hosted on Clubhouse. And so the show must have happened, or must happen, you know, periodically. I don't know, whenever they were having that conversation on Clubhouse. And obviously, as we know, for some of you folks that have used Clubhouse in the past, Clubhouse is more real time conversation. So there's some of you who are watching us here live today, and then you have real time conversation with us. But most of you are listening to this a week
After the fact.
after we've, or 5 days after we record. So it's
That's
not
right.
real-time conversation. You can send us feedback for sure, and we can respond to you for sure. But the majority, I would say 90% of our audience is post, right? Whereas with Clubhouse, it's happening at that time. And I feel that that back and forth, and also Clubhouse itself, I think you can private message people, and I think that that's where that relationship might have become easier, right? You're doing the show, the guy kept showing up, I'm sure he had questions. I'm inferring, this is pure conjecture here. The guy kept showing up, he was like a super fan, he kept engaging with the content, asking more questions. They sort of became friends after that, but I guess he was super in love with this person, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, people,
Mm-hmm.
I guess
Mm-hmm.
he was in love with her, and he, made one of those comments that it's like, if sort of like, if nobody can have you, if I can't have you, nobody can,
I
kind of a
can't
thing, or I'm
have
gonna,
you. No
yeah,
one
it's,
can have you.
yeah,
Always romantic and not creepy at all.
it's so annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, bonkers though. But we were just like, a podcaster was murdered. Oh
Yeah,
my god, it's the end for the rest of us, but it's probably not.
it is horrible. So, oh no, here, so this is what the dude said. She mentioned to the police, because she did go to the police about this. She said one message suggested he would love her forever and would burn himself in front of her house.
Ouch, dude.
But I mean,
There's
that
no
would have
need
been,
for that.
there's also no need. I mean, I mean, why didn't he just do that?
He did buy her presents,
Well, it
items of
seems like there were,
affection, things that were mailed to
I
her.
think, but I think that I may be wrong though, but when I read that, it felt to me, Jess, that the presents that were being sent to her weren't only from him. I
Nice.
think it was from her audience. I think her audience was sending
It says
gifts to her.
instances where the individual did show up bearing gifts.
Oh,
There were
okay.
items of affection and gifts that were also mailed to the victim. I mean, yeah,
Okay,
that could have been
that's
her
what.
audience, but the article says he showed up with things, which is
Mm.
I don't mind
Yeah,
gifts
so
actually, but
that's
don't come
really
to my house.
creepy. And so it makes me, and obviously I've been talking a lot about in that other show that I have, Fuzzy Logic, we just talked about privacy. And one of the biggest things for me, as you know, right? Like, I think one question that was put to me was, when is privacy get in the way? Like, when is it a negative thing? Like, and to
Mhm.
talk about it from the place of being a creator and whatnot. Is there a time when you feel that being private about stuff and is a negative as a content creator? And when he
Mhm.
said that, I was like, I have to say that I don't believe there's any time for me, because
Yeah.
as you know, like I was just thinking about, whenever a new year starts and you want to like do things differently, and people choose a word of the year and a theme and all of the things. For every time I look back at my writing on January 1st, or when I'm doing that visioning for the year, every single time it's centered around privacy. And I'm like, I just want to be more private. Privacy. I just want to have this private. I don't want to be so public. I want to be private, like every single time. So to me,
do you think it's time to just
uh,
accept it and get used to being a little bit public, or what?
well, no. But the thing is, it's sort of like I am like, that's what I'm saying. But I have stopped in so many different ways, like not being public. Like there's many things that I've done that are not. Look how many times I post on Instagram a year. It's like that I
Also,
have
why
in
are
the
you trying
past.
to shut
I'm like,
everyone else out? What is your deal? Every
I
year
don't
you want
want
to be more.
anybody.
Every year you're like, less people in my life, please. I don't like the
Yes,
people and I
no,
want
no.
less.
I do. Yeah,
It's
because
kind of
because
hurtful, I must say. As one of the people in your life, it's a little hurtful.
I think that it has to do with my job
Okay,
on
maybe.
social,
Okay,
right?
maybe.
I
Mhm.
think it has to do with my job on social, because I feel I would be more apt to engage and connect with people if I didn't have to do it for my job. And
I don't know if you would. I think if you didn't have this job, you would sail away into the LC abyss, never to
oh my
return.
God, it would be so amazing. I know.
Ah, see? I knew it. Um, yeah, not cool, bro. All right. Wait, there's something I want to do before we go into Mastodon. I want to say a couple
Yeah.
things. First,
Yes.
we ran a contest last week saying that whoever bought a ticket, from International Women's Day and beyond, we would mention you and your show on the show. And there were 3 people that bought a ticket and entered to win. So we have Holland Saltzman, and her show is called The Novel Neighbor, Novel.
Mm.
We have Megan Lewis, and her show is called Story Pillar, Stories and SEL for Kids. Very cool. And lastly, we have Makita Smith, whose show is called Time THYME for Tea with Makita, which sounds very cool and cute. So thank you guys for taking us up on our offer for Women's Day. This week, if you're listening on Friday, today is probably the last day that you can buy a ticket and enter to win a free Vocaster 2, complete with
Ooh,
microphone and headphones and a mixer. It's really cool, and I would like to thank Focusrite for their generosity in giving us this
I love
product to
that.
give away. Thank you, Focusrite. The
Really good.
Vocaster's awesome. If you go on shepodcasts.com, in the show notes, you'll see the link. You can go take a look at it. But either way, buy a ticket and you'll be entered to win only until midnight Friday. So go
I
get your
love
ticket right now, shepodcastlive.com. And there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, don't forget, because it's getting late, nominate whoever you want to nominate for the Sonic Bloom Awards. Just sonicbloomawards.com. If there's a podcaster that has been particularly helpful, or one that you think has an amazing talent, go to sonicbloomawards.com, nominate them for an award. You only have until March 31st. So please don't forget. And now we can move into Mastodon, which
Oh my
so far
God.
eluded me in its usefulness and fun.
So
So let's
speaking
go.
of, I know. Okay, so my usage of social media, the reason that I'm in the boat that I'm in now is because
Boat.
I'm a huge early adopter, right? So something
Yes.
comes out, I want to test it. I want to go, I want to poke the buttons, I want to see what's going on in there, I want to play with it, and thus this is where I am, right? But so now, given the fact that Twitter has essentially imploded and there's so many things about it that I loved and now I really don't, I've been totally rearranging my usage of social in so many different ways. I'm sure I'm not the only one.
No,
And
of course not.
Mastodon is one of the places that folks are going into. And I'm not, in no way am I saying that Mastodon is not problematic in its own ways. In fact, when I first went into Mastodon, which was, I can't remember when I first signed up, It was last year at some point. The first, I did not get it. And I remember I went in and I was overwhelmed with the posts were from people I didn't even
Yeah, I
care.
don't
Like
get it.
it was like
I don't get why
going
it's
into
useful, and I don't get why it's fun. I don't get either one
yeah,
of
it
those
was
things.
like I was literally in the place. Like, yeah, it's you go to a place and it's the worst. It's like where you would never go, right? You walk in,
Yeah.
you're like, I have
Why am
zero
I
in
here?
common with all of these people.
Why am I here? Yeah,
Why am I here? Yeah,
exactly.
like I don't
Mhm.
even know what to say. Like, I don't know. So
We
I
feel
kind of was there and I paid attention. Once in a while I would go in and I didn't even know like how to get anyway. I had all the problems most people are having right now. But I kept at it. It was one of those things that what ended up happening is because of the massive exodus from Twitter and the majority of people who were tech folks, a lot and remember we covered the Twitter apps that had denied the APIs, and so those folks that had built these beautiful apps no longer could even have the apps because the API access was completely turned off and they just could not even make it work. Those developers switched their focus to Mastodon. And that was something that didn't exist before. And before you would have to do most of the things on the browser itself, or it was a little bit more they were less than stellar apps here and there that were equally sort of non Apple-y. And I'm saying Apple-y in the sense that every time we go into an Apple app, it's clean interface. You can kind
yeah,
of figure out where everything goes, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is
yeah.
great."
If you've
And
seen one, you
easy.
know how to use them all.
Yeah, yeah. And usually they have it's nice, the layout, the whole thing. So all these devs started to develop stuff for Mastodon, and so now there is a resurgence of a lot of these devs that are creating these apps. And that's made it so much easier for people to engage with Mastodon because it feels a little bit more like a Twitter type of an app. And you
Mhm.
know how that works, right? So that's
I
step
do.
one. Step
Mhm.
two is that there's a lot of people, a lot of organizations, including Medium, from Medium dot, what is it, ME? I don't even know what they're or medium.com,
Oh, it's
everybody
calm,
who
yeah.
.com, the writer, people who write in that platform, that. So they created an instance. Flipboard, which is another app that works really well on the iPad. Their CEO also now has a way of being able, they started an instance and there's direct connection to Mastodon inside of Flipboard. I believe Automatic, who are the owners or the big company that owns WordPress, are always also creating an instance. So instances there are separate little communities, I guess you could say, that are curated and self-hosted. So every instance inside of Mastodon has its own person who runs it on a
Yeah,
server. So they are managed independently and they talk to each other, but they are separate completely. And that's what makes it a little confusing for some. So all of this to say, it has become very easy for me to navigate myself on Mastodon because I hooked up with community. And that was the key for me, was I started to follow things that I love, like ADHD content, PKM content, stationary content, pen content, podcasting
oh,
content. Like
got it.
those are like hashtags that I follow. And then there's
Mhm.
all of these really cool conversations that are happening. And I just follow the hashtags and I have connected with a lot of people who I didn't even know were there. It tends to
Ooh,
be
that's
slightly,
appealing.
it's great. It's a little bit more skewed towards tech, science, media, that part, right? It's very tech heavy. And a lot of the folks that I've followed most of my life, especially the early adopters, are all really tech heavy. So a lot of Apple conversations are going on there. I follow Apple, hashtag Apple, if you will, iOS, hashtag iOS. So I see a lot of these things come up and I've been having a really good time there. I also had something kind of
That's nice.
go slightly, I guess, viral, if you will, when I wrote something on
Oh,
Mastodon and it like got a lot of boot. Like you
like
call them,
feedback?
you call them boosts. So when people like
Oh.
what we call reshares, they call
Mhm.
boosts there. And when people
Okay.
do an update, it's called a toot. You call it a toot. So it's not a tweet, it's a toot.
All
So,
right. I don't
okay,
think I
I'm
like
just
that.
so it's a toot. But I actually wrote something that is that it was about what do you call it? This is what I wrote that got a lot of toots and a lot of
You're a
shares
toot.
and likes. I said, schedule for later is an essential feature that needs to be added to any kind of communication or creation platform or app,
Agree.
especially to support folks with ADHD. Being able to immediately write that email, that text post, that update, and schedule it to go out at an appropriate time is probably one of the biggest quality of life, mental health,
Agree.
work life hacks. My brain needs
Absolutely.
to
You're right.
take care of it now, and much more effective than reminders and adding it to a to-do list. So I
100%.
wrote that and I got 56 boosts. So it was shared and I got 116 likes for that. And I got all kinds of really amazing conversation around that. And from people I don't even know. Like, because the hashtag that I used was hashtag ADHD. And so what happens there is, and there's no
Mm.
way to like quote, you know how there's quote retweets
Yeah.
or quote
Yeah.
tweets? That doesn't
Yeah.
exist in Mastodon. You just boost it. So if you see something you like, you just boost that post. And if you see that on, and then you see it on your own feed. So if somebody boosts it, you see it on your own feed if you're following them. And so you get a lot more reach. And the other thing is that there is no algorithm. It's just real time. So if
Mhm.
somebody bumps into your stuff, you'll still get boosted and looked at and all this stuff. So I'm really digging it. I'm just saying, I know it's, and I'm not, it's challenging. It's a challenging
Yeah.
platform to deal
Well, I'm
with.
glad you've explained some of it to me. I'm gonna keep. Well, I'm probably not gonna keep trying it, but I'll eventually poke in there. Lena says that you sold it to her, so that's you got one on your team. So rah rah.
I got one on my team. But you can follow, it's following those hashtags. It's really great. And the community is there too. There's like a couple of accounts that share other kinds of accounts to follow too that are based on topic. And
Mhm.
it's really cool to be able to follow that. I've really found it incredibly helpful. I can break down some of my workflows at some point and talk about what I'm using, but I usually use Ivory, which is an
Mhm.
iOS app, and also Ice Cubes. Those are the two
Mhm.
apps that I use on my devices. On my computer, I use Elk. It's
Interesting.
ELK. And Elk
ELK.
is I like ELK. It's a really pretty little web app. I guess it's an applet that is still it's an alpha actually, but it's very stable and I like it. It's got a great interface. It's very clean and I communicate like that mostly on my desktop when I do that kind of stuff. There is an article that I'll share in the show notes. It's from Diverse Tech Geek, how to find Mastodon users recommended accounts to follow. And Jess, if you look at that article, it actually breaks everything down that I told you. Like there are third-party tools that you
Mhm.
can look at. There's like Debirdify, Fedi Finder, Twittodon, Movetodon. And those are currently using the API, which as we all know is going to be disappearing soon. So I don't know if or not that they will work. But what you can do is you use these tools that are in this article and then it pulls your existing Twitter list, sucks it into your account, if you will, and it'll find the people that have Mastodon accounts in any instance. So even if you're not in that specific instant as other people are. So
Yeah, I don't know if
those
I would
are
want that.
it was real. I didn't
It's a
want to
big
do it. And
list.
then when I did do it, it was helpful because there were some that I really wanted to follow and it was really easy for me to do that. But this article from, like I said, from Diverse Tech Geek is very good. And it breaks down all kinds of ways in how you can find people to follow there. And I promise you, you will discover some very interesting people that you've never seen before. And again, I really like the fact that it's very much, there's no algorithm. Like there's no, like, just because that one toot got all of these reshares and stuff, it doesn't mean that now I'm popping up on everybody's algorithm now. You have to be there.
Right. Like Twitter used to be.
Correct. So this is exactly. So I love it. I think it's, I've been really enjoying myself. I don't go all the time, but weirdly, it's become the place that I do find out about a lot of more information.
Ooh, all right. I'll give it a try. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It is almost 2:00 and I have something I have to do.
You do.
So I'm going to run away. But before we do, what was that? Magic spell?
Dance.
I like it.
I'm wrapping it up. Okay, go.
Oh, she's wrapping it up. Okay.
Yeah.
That was crazy. Thank you so much for listening to She Podcasts. If you want to find any of the links we talked about today, go to shepodcast.com. You can also find us on socials, Pinterest, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at She Podcasts. What else? Don't forget to nominate your favorite podcaster at sonicbloomawards.com and also buy your ticket to our event. It is in Washington, D.C. this June 19, 20, 21, 22 in Washington, D.C. at the MGM National Harbor. Go check it out, shepodcastlive.com. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being alive. We love you.
Mean it.
Bye. Sorry to run away. Sorry to run away.
Okay, and we ending broadcast. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. Sorry.